Okay, let's get to this. 5 cosine 1/2 x. Don't even touch the graph, please. Don't even touch the graph. What I need from you before we set up any graph, hey, what's the frequency, which will lead me to the period, and I want to know what's the min and the max. Because the period will help you set up the x-axis, the min and the max will help you set up your y-axis. So let's go here. Let's start with Matt, frequency. 1/2. Let's go calling somebody. Here we go. What's the period formula? Okay, so I'm going to go 2 pi over 1/2. Hey, by the way, everyone see where we got that b from? Straight from the equation. I plucked it right off between the cosine and the x. Hopefully we can deal with this. 2 pi times 2, 4 pi. Hey, everyone stop right now. That tells me on my x-axis, I'm going to end at 4 pi. Not go by 4 pi. At the very end, my last tick mark on my graph should be 4 pi. Now, how do I figure out what I go by? Where do I start and what do I go by so I can end up at 4 pi? That is your key values, which we find by taking the period and times 1/4 or divide by 4, whatever you prefer. I always multiply by 1/4, but if you want to divide by 4, it's the same thing. So what are we going to go by on the x-axis? Pi's, yes. We're going to go by pi. So the first value should be pi. I add another pi, add another one until I get to 4 pi. Okay? Before we get to the graph, what's the min and the max going to be here? Is there any shift in this graph? No. There's no plus or minus after. There's no shift. So I look to this value, which is called our what? Amplitude. That will tell you the range. Lucas, what's the range here, my max and min, if there's a 5 here for the amplitude? -5 to 5. So go ahead right now. Set up your x-axis to go by pi's, and set up your y-axis to go from -5 to 5. However you want to space it out is your call. First value should be pi on the x-axis. Last value should be 4 pi. In between, you add pi every time. Can we find these two in the middle here? Ready? Pi plus pi. 2 pi plus pi. There we go. I add pi every time. Is everybody good on the x and the y axes before we go into the graph now? Is this a sine or a cosine graph? Cosine. So if you got to look at your cosine graph, look at it right now. Alex, pick somebody, please. Where does cosine start? Usually starts at 1, but this one's going to start at no. That half just tells me the frequency. That has nothing to do about the range. It's going to start at 5. Instead of starting at its maximum of 1, it's going to start at a maximum of 5. Let's go, Brandon. Keep going around the room here. Where's the cosine curve go after it hits its maximum? Does the 5 affect that at all? No. The amplitude does not affect the zeros. What's the only thing that affects the zeros? Some sort of shift up or down. Okay, the amplitude never affects where the graph is at 0. Let's go. Keep going, Cooper. Around. Okay, it goes to maximum, 0, and then it hits its minimum, which we said the minimum for this graph, -5. Keep going, Patrick. Keep going around here. And then it comes back to it, goes to 0. And again, amplitude does not affect it. Only a shift would. And then where does the cosine graph end? Okay, yep, goes back to its maximum value, which in our case would be 5. Yep. Take your calculators right now, because I know some of you are in, I love to check, and I love to see that. All right? To make sure you put these darn points in the right spots, make sure you're in radian mode, right? Make sure you're in radian mode. Go to your y= screen, 5 cosine 1/2 x. Don't press graph, because we got to change your window to match it to our window. Okay, so go ahead, get 5 cosine 1/2 x in there. Once you do that, go to your window. Ready? Let's fill in the window together. What is, now we're on the x-axis, everybody. What is your minimum x value? Minimum x value, 0. What's your maximum x value that we have on here? All the way to 4 pi, so put 4 pi in there. It'll change it to a decimal, that's fine. And then the scale, what are we going by? Every pi. So your x scale is every pi. And then now I'm going to my y minimum. What's my minimum on the y-axis? -5 all the way to a maximum of 5, and you can keep the scale at 1, that's fine. And then go ahead and graph. Make sure your 0s are at the proper tick marks. Make sure your 5s are at the proper tick marks, -5. Okay? Because remember, those tick marks represent pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi right now. Easy way to check if you plotted them correctly. Okay? Easy way to check. Anybody having an issue with that? Because I want you guys to try to check here. We all good here? What are we putting in? Okay, that's all good. You guys that are waiting for me, go ahead and try to find the frequency, period, minimum, maximum of the next one, range. 0 to 4 pi. Okay, you're not going by ones though. You're going, what did we go by? We went by what? No. We went by, what was our key value every pi? So that's what you want your scale to go by. Go by pi. And then everything should be, why we keep, let's see here. 5 cosine 1/2. I think maybe let's try the x inside the parenthesis. There we go. Make sure it's inside with it. Okay. Yep. Got it. Any shift on this one? No shift, but we do have to worry about a negative sign though when we graph. Who just ended me? Brooke, you ended. Need somebody. Okay, here we go. What's the frequency? Pi over 4. Got it. I'll go to you next, Brianne, because I'm assuming it's going to be you. 2 pi divided by, which is pi over 4. Let's clean that up right now. It'll be 2 pi times 4 over pi. What crosses out, Brianne? Pi. So what's my period here? 8. No pi, just 8. So your x-axis should end at 8. Now I got to cut it up into equal intervals. Need somebody, Brianne? What do I multiply the 8 by to find out what I'm going by? 1/4, and so I'm going to go by what? 2s. All right, so your first value should be 2. and then a couple in between, so you end up at 8. But you're going by 2s now, going by 2s. Let's go, Catherine. Need somebody else? What's my minimum and maximum on this graph? -2 and 2. There we go. So you guys know how to set up your y and x now. And then we'll talk about what the curve looks like. What are the two middle values in between 2 and 8? I'm going by 2s, right? So the next one should be 4 and 6. Okay, time to graph. It's the sine curve. The sine curve. So look at your sine curve if you need to right now. Where does sine start? At 0. Is there any shift in this graph? So guess where this graph's going to start? At 0. It would not start at 0 if there's a shift. That's the only way. Then it goes to its maximum, right? According to your graphs, it goes to its maximum, but there's a negative here, so how's that going to affect it? It's actually going to go to its minimum now, which our minimum is -2. Yep. So that, again, flips it. So it won't go to the max. It'll go to the min. Where's it going to next? Back to 0. Okay, usually at this point on your curve, it would go to its minimum, but we're going to flip it and go to its max, which is what in this case? 2. And then where's this going to end? At 0. There is your sine curve for this one. Ask away here. Anything before we start shifting? Because those are the next two is shifting. Anything? Okay, so let's shift now. I can't do any graphing unless I know how to set up my x and my y axis. So here we go. Let's get to this 3-pack over here. Reagan, what's my frequency? Yep, 2. Anna, what's the formula for period? So the period will be 2 pi divided by 2. Emily, you want to reduce that? What's the period? Pi. Guys, again, I know you might get confused with this. This is not what I go by. This is what I end with on the x-axis. At the very end, my last tick mark should be pi. So what do I break it up into now? Well, take the pi, multiply it by 1/4. And I know I'm going to help you with this right now. I'm going to help you. I'm going to go by what? Nothing cancels out here. I'm going to go every pi over 4, and I will help you out right now. Okay, everyone ready? So go ahead, set up your 4 markings here, wherever you want to space them. You know you're going to start at? What are we going to start? What should be the first mark? It's what we're going by, which is pi over 4. Yep. And you should know the last one too, which is going to end up being the period, pi. I just got to figure out what the heck's in between. Okay, what's in between? Ready? Make this easy on yourself. There's a 1 in front, right? So this is 1 pi over 4. Guess what's the next one's going to be? 2 pi over 4. So 1 pi over 4. If you want to go ahead and reduce that, I don't care. Leave it if you want. I just want it there. 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, then I'll end up with 3 pi over 4. And then how did I get this? 4 pi over 4, right, would be the next one if I wrote it out, and 4's cancel, and there's your pi. Perfect. Okay. Do you remember what I suggested to you on Wednesday before you do the shift? Yep. Do the pre-shift curve. I'm still going to recommend that. So here's what I want to do with you right now, because this is exactly what we did the last 2 examples. Can you guys graph -2 sine 2x on your own? Let me see you do it on your own. Because if you can do that on your own, we are golden for the shift. All right, can you graph -2 sine 2x on your own? And all the hard work's done, guys. It's all done. The hard work's done. I know it's going to go from -2 to 2. There's a negative in front, so watch out. Watch out. Take a look at the one I have up there and just make sure we match before we shift this. Remember, it starts going downhill because of the negative. So it reverses everything. Zeros still stay zeros. Everyone's look all right? How I got that? Questions before we shift. Where are we shifting, by the way? Down 1 unit. So I should probably add on what to my y-axis? What should I add on to my y-axis if I'm shifting all those points down 1? Probably add in -3, right? Right here, because this -2 is going to go down to -3. So just add that in. Okay. So take all your points. Now, hey, I don't know how you set up your y-axis. Like for me, I'm just not going to go down a unit. I got to go actually physically down to -1. Make sure you go down a full unit here, however you labeled your y-axis. So 0 goes to -1. This goes to 1. This goes to -1. There we go. There it is. And just make sure we know. Ready to do one on your own? The last one. See if we can do it on your own. Look around at the people in your group when you finish. See if you guys match. I'll put my versions up here too. Okay, again, recommend doing the pre-shift one first. Find your frequency. Find the period. Remember, the period is what your x-axis should end, not by what you're going by, where it ends. It's got everything, guys. It's got a negative, it's got an amplitude and a shift.